Okay.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to City Views. I'm thrilled to have you here today. My name is Rebecca Naker, and I am the City Council member representing Ward 2 in St. Paul. And I am thrilled to have with me three guests today, Sean Filowich, David Palm, and Travis Bistadu, and they will be introducing themselves in just a minute. Before we get into our conversation, just a little bit of background about City Views. These are conversations to give you an inside look at how city government works and the people who do that work. I'm hoping that this helps you understand the challenges that city officials face, and also to see them and me and us as real human beings who are grappling with really complex challenges. You can see the other City Views interviews that I've done by scrolling down on my Facebook page. And you can also ask questions today just by typing the Facebook comments right below this feed, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as we can. Please remember that this is intended to be a civil conversation. Think not presidential debates. And we were going to ask that all questions be submitted in a spirit of genuine curiosity. So we will get started here. I just want to tell viewers one quick thing, which is that I've never done a City Views with 4 guests before. I did notice in our tech check earlier that there are some slight tech issues. So if you notice that one of us maybe can't hear the other one, that's probably the case. Do my best to work through it and still have us have a good conversation, but just bear with us a little bit, as I know you always do, as we have this conversation. So today, we're going to be talking not about one particular person, department, or program, but about something I hear about from you all the time, which is neighborhood conflict, problems with a property near you or down the street, noise issues, nuisance issues, code maintenance issues, criminal or illegal activity. Those are the kind of things that I know we are often talking about in the Ward 2 office and with you. And so today I brought together 3 people who are my partners when we deal with these sorts of issues. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a moment just by sort of answering this first opening question. So guests, we know that there are lots of types of neighborhood conflict, some of which I just mentioned, some of which we can control, some of which we can't. And I'd like each of you to introduce yourself and just give us a brief overview of the kind of neighborhood conflicts you deal with in your role. And I'll call on you. So Sean, can you go first?
You bet. My name is Sean Filowich. I'm a police officer in the city of St. Paul. Yesterday was my anniversary date, and I just started my 25th year. I'm currently assigned to the Central District, and I'm assigned to a unit that's called Code Enforcement. In that job, I have another partner. His name is Officer Dave Quast, who couldn't be with us today. But the two of us have many responsibilities within our position as code enforcement officers. But our main 2 responsibilities, number one, assist DSI, which is the Department of Safety and Inspection. When the inspectors, either on the fire side or the code enforcement side, get complaints, they're often getting complaints at some of the same properties that we are routinely sent to for criminal complaints. So my number one role when I assist them is actually for their safety. The second responsibility we have that takes up the majority of our time, we receive the intake on complaints for problem properties within the district. We get those complaints via the city website, through community meetings, when citizens call the department to report a problem property or a nuisance in their neighborhood. We get them from officers that are out on patrol. And we also get a report that's generated monthly that we call the excessive consumption report. And what that report does is that will give us every address in the district that has received more than 3 or more complaints within a given month. What we will then do is we look into those calls, talk to the officers that responded, and we try to identify problems before they become larger and work together with DSI, the city attorney, city council to see if we can solve those problems and make things a little more livable for the people that are complaining. That's in a nutshell our 2 big responsibilities, and that's what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Great, thank you. And we'll get into more detail on your role as we continue the conversation. I also want to give you kudos, Sean. I think you are the person who is most in character of anybody I've ever interviewed on City Views. I think you are in your squad car as we speak.
Mobile office.
Good work on that one. You mentioned code enforcement. So Travis, would you be willing to go next?
Sure. Can you hear me okay, Rebecca? Great.
Yep.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Travis Bistadu. I am one of two deputy directors that works for the city of St. Paul. I have three divisions that I'm responsible for, two of which are relevant to today's conversation. Those would be our fire safety section and our code enforcement section. I've been in this role for a little over 5 years now, but I've been doing this work for the past 20 or so, give or take. Our involvement with complaints and neighborhood disputes are really driven by the neighbors themselves, as well as complaints that we receive through the police department. Most of those complaints come in via our complaint and information line, which is located, or you can access by calling 651-266-8989. Or we may receive some of those complaints, like I said, through the police department or other methods. I think there's an important distinction before we kind of get into the details about how we do our work. And in this realm, there's two areas that we're focused on. First are those that are non-owner occupied. Those complaints and properties are maintained and managed through our fire certificate of occupancy program. And then all of the other complaints that are owner occupied properties are managed through our code enforcement division. I think it's also relevant to mention that our vacant building program, the city of St. Paul has a very robust and effective vacant building program. And a lot of our complaints come in and are the result of vacant buildings. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that some of our complaint activity is down a little bit due to some budget constrictions that the city is facing. We're not doing or taking as many proactive complaints as we used to. Prior to 2020, when we were out in the field and we would see, a house that has tall grass and weeds or is not particularly maintained as a result of a complaint, we would also look throughout the neighborhood and see if there are any adjacent properties that have a similar condition. Because our budget has been reduced a little bit over the past year or so, we're not taking as many proactive complaints. So the bulk of our work now comes in through the complaint and information line. So we really rely on neighbors and those in the neighborhood to drive a lot of our work. And from there, I can hand it back to you.
Thanks so much, Travis. And again, we'll get into more detail. Appreciate that distinction. And finally, David, it's rare that we get our city attorneys involved on these kinds of calls. I think you're our first lawyer on the call. So excited to have you. Can you tell us about your role?
Well, I'm excited to be here, and Councilmember, thank you for doing this. I think this is very important as we try to reach out to our community through the pandemic and COVID time, right? Because we haven't even been able to be together. We're doing a lot of stuff via Zoom, Microsoft Meets, Facebook Live right now. And I see there's some replies from the members of the community already saying they like these streams and we should do more of these, and we talked about it. And so I've been in the city attorney's office for 15 years. In February will be my 16th year. I've had a variety of roles, but one of the roles that I've really been involved with that I really enjoy is working with the community. And right now I'm involved and I'm part of our community justice unit. And I've had the opportunity to work closely with your office and Sean and Travis on a variety of issues. The downtown issues have been difficult this past year with the pandemic, with the homeless population. And we've worked hard on those issues. I worked really closely with Travis and Sean, and we're trying to manage a big problem that we didn't have just a few years ago. I've worked closely with your office and with Sean and Travis on some of our problem properties. We've had drug activity. Sometimes we have properties that have, code enforcement issues that have become, eyesores to the neighborhood with, not being painted, dilapidated windows, various things, right? And so we approach all these things. We'll get into more detail on this later, and depending on the questions, through a variety of tools that we have, right? And our goal always is to try to work with the neighbors to try to solve these problems and with the property owners. And sometimes, we have serious criminal issues at some of these properties. You'll recall some of these from maybe a year or two ago that it took us a lot of work and a lot of effort, but through a great partnership with the police department, DSI, and your office and our office, we're able to solve these issues. So they're challenging, but they're very important, right? Because we all want good, safe community. We want a vibrant, safe downtown, and we're hoping that we'll get back to that, right, in the next several months. So, yeah, I'll just defer to my colleagues and to your next question. Thank you for having me again. This is gonna be a good
Thanks,
discussion.
David. And just so you know, for all of my guests, there was a little bit of background noise there, a little bit of kind of like a thumping noise. So, but maybe just be careful with the whatever's going on in the background. So actually, Sean, I'm going to start with you on this one. So often the constituents that I hear from are concerned about reports of potential criminal activity at a property. And often it's not at the property, it might be outside the property, it might be in the vicinity, or more like suspicions of something illegal happening within a property. Sometimes it's not criminal, sometimes it's nuisance, it's noise, it's expletives in the backyard that are, that children next door are hearing, things like that. How do you and your team handle reports of that kind of activity at a property? What kind of information is helpful to you? What do you do with it? And also explain to us, tell us about your limitations.
You bet. And before I answer that, I want to reiterate that I think I'm a much better officer than I am at technology. And I had difficulty hearing Dave. So if I repeat something that he said, I apologize in advance. But most often, calls of criminal activity are generated by the community. Calling 911, they see something that isn't right. They actually see criminal activity, or they see something that just doesn't feel right to them. They'll call 911, notify our dispatch center, and a squad will be dispatched. The officers will arrive and they'll assess the situation and find out essentially what they have and take any action that's needed. Obviously, number one is to protect life and property and identify what's occurring and using their tools solve the problem the best way that they can. The problems that we run into a lot of times when we get to a call, we're dispatched to nuisance issues, whether it be loud noise, yelling, things like that. And I think everybody expects that there's going to be an immediate fix, and we would like to immediately correct the problem. But the problem we run into is everything that we respond to is not essentially criminal. So that can be a problem. And a lot of times the person that called is left with the feeling that the police didn't do anything. Well, sometimes our hands are tied. And if the nuisance doesn't meet the threshold of a crime, sometimes the best thing that we can do is actually advise the people, hey, you need to keep it down. You need to respect your neighbors. Something else that we'll run into is we might have a non-cooperative victim. There might have been an argument or some type of a domestic, but on many occasions we run into a situation where the victim or the family or the friend does not want to cooperate. And essentially what it comes down to is if we don't have a victim, it's very tough for us to have a crime. We might also run into a situation where we don't have any independent witnesses. We've got two stories. We don't dispute what the caller is telling us, but we have a certain burden of proof that we have to meet. And if we don't have a clear-cut probable cause or the facts of what really occurred, it sometimes is tough for us to take action. This can create frustration in the community. Many of the properties that I deal with, I get emails or calls almost on a daily basis of nuisance activity. And every single one of us in the department would like to go out and make that better and make your neighborhood more livable. But oftentimes, again, the problem that we run into is that although it's a nuisance and it's not an ideal environment to live next door or across the street from, it doesn't essentially meet the elements of a crime. So that's where Dave and I get involved. And I would like to encourage people not to be discouraged to call. I hear at many of the meetings that we go to, I called the police and they didn't do anything. I called the police, it took them 15 minutes to respond. Why would I even call? They get discouraged and they don't call. One thing I like to tell people is don't get discouraged. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you're not seeing that actually helps us to address the problem. You're our eyes and ears. A lot of times, granted, I get the excessive consumption reports, but that doesn't all the time tell us or identify a problem in the neighborhood. So those calls, either the officers that are out on patrol, they'll hear that address and they'll begin to identify that, okay, there might be a problem with this block, this corner, this particular address. It also generates a case number. When I get those calls, I pull up every single one of them and I look at it. I look at the comments of the call and identify what is actually happening. And then Dave and I, we don't respond to 911 calls on a regular basis. So we have the time, and that's where we get involved. We'll take the information that you called in from the other neighborhoods or neighborhood citizens that have complained, and we'll take that information and then we'll work with DSI, or we'll work with the city attorney. And we also have time. We work with the property owners. We work with the tenants, and we'll sit down with them. And even though it doesn't meet the elements of a crime, we'll try to problem solve. And we actually do have a large percentage of success when dealing with those properties. So the biggest message I would like to get out is don't be discouraged. Keep calling. You can email me, call us directly, and we'll do our best to try to help you with that problem. Now, if there is criminal activity, that changes the game a little bit. We'll certainly go there. If there's an arrest to be made, we'll make the arrest. We'll generate the reports. Because I have a relationship with the property owner, I'll contact the property owner and say, hey, did you realize that one of your tenants was arrested for possession of a controlled substance or arrested for an assault? A lot of times that constitutes a lease violation. And per the crime-free multi-housing, they can take action to either evict or issue a lease violation, and we can try to solve the problem that way. Now, COVID has put forth some restrictions as far as evictions, lease violations, things like that. But some of those have been lifted. And as of now, if a property owner has excessive damage to their property, or there is an actual proven criminal act on their property, they can sometimes, if all the elements are there, move forward with an eviction. And sometimes that's the way that we'll solve the problem. So we have a lot of tools available to us. And again, if I could reiterate for the third time, please don't get discouraged. Call. The information that you give us will definitely help us to do our jobs.
Thank you, Sean. That was really helpful. A ton of information shared there. So I'm really glad this is going to continue to live on my Facebook page after today, because I might go back and watch that again just to make sure I caught everything. Thank you. And so Travis, switching to you, we get complaints about criminal activity, nuisance behavior. That's the kind of thing that, Sean, it sounds like you respond to. What about upkeep? What about maintenance? What about code issues? And I know there is a pretty firm line between criminal activity and code violations. And maybe, Travis, you can speak a little bit to how your department gets involved with code violations. And maybe you can speak a little bit, there was a question about SeeClickFix, how people can report those sorts of violations to you.
Sure. And let me just address the SeeClickFix question. That was a third-party vendor that the city invested in a number of years ago, and our contract had expired. The reason we didn't recontract with that vendor is because it essentially was just shooting us emails anyways that we had to just go back into the app and repopulate. So it wasn't a very effective tool. And it certainly wasn't saving the city any time, and it was a resource that we had to pay for on top of, staffing the individual app. So I will say that there is additional discussions about replacing that particular app. So it's a little bit easier for folks to provide a complaint online that is also geographically located. So we have a greater ease in locating that particular complaint. So getting back to your larger question, council member, oftentimes, like Officer Filowich was mentioning, we partner up with the St. Paul Police Department when we have a property that is particularly troubling. So in state statute, there are certain violations, weapons possession, prostitution, drug sales, liquor sales, gambling, where when we have confirmed crimes of that nature, we have the ability to collaborate with the police department, determine that a property is technically and under state statute a nuisance, and then require that property owner to mitigate that nuisance. So oftentimes it's us working in partnership with the police department to work with a property owner to make sure that that violation is remedied. And, you know, if they can change the behavior of a tenant or an occupant such that the nuisance is no longer an issue, then that goes away for that particular property owner. If they can't, we can forcibly make them take action on that particular property. So it's a tool in the toolbox that we don't use all that often, but we do pull out in special occasions. And just to give everybody a guesstimate of how often we use the problem properties tool, it's probably somewhere on the order of once or twice a month that we're collaborating with the police department on a particular problem. The other thing I just want to echo Officer Filowich's comments that reporting things is really the key first step that residents can take in terms of managing a problem property. Calling us, and the general number is 651-266-8989, is really critical to getting that complaint in the system and giving us an opportunity to improve the quality of life in that neighborhood.
And Travis, just as a follow-up on that, is there a distinction between, you mentioned owner-occupied properties before, which is not quite the same thing that I'm about to ask about, but rental-occupied versus owner-occupied properties? Do we have a different ability to enforce in those two different cases?
Yes. When we have an owner-occupied property, the main tools that we have to enforce a particular violation is either a criminal citation, which is kind of an onerous and I would say a heavy-handed tool to address nuisance types of complaints, and we have excessive consumption fines. So every time we go on site and we see a repeat problem, we can fine that property owner the cost of sending a city employee out to reinvestigate that situation or that ordinance violation. That tends to be a pretty effective tool to change behaviors, and that's really all our goal is we want voluntary compliance. Whatever the violation is, we want that corrected in a voluntary manner. We're not out there to try to make money or make anybody's life hard. That's certainly the case. But with certificate of occupancy properties, they also have that certificate, and we have the ability to withdraw that certificate and effectively condemn that property if they fail to comply. So it's an extra tool in the toolbox that we can use for those non-owner occupied properties. And I should mention that includes properties that are greater than 2 units in size and above. So if it's an owner-occupied duplex, then it falls to code enforcement. But if it's a non-owner-occupied single-family or duplex, then it rolls to our fire certificate of occupancy program. So just a little bit of nuance there.
Got it. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And moving on to David, from the legal perspective, and Sean mentioned this a little bit, but at a very basic level, what is the city's ability to enforce the law when someone is on his or her own private property? I know we have very strong property rights in this country, and also we have our laws. So can someone commit illegal acts in their own home or in their own backyard? And if not, what is our ability? What's the burden of proof? What are the things that our officers and that you need to be thinking about when we are trying to enforce the law? And I think you're on mute still. There you go. Oh. I think you're on mute now. You should be good. No, I can't hear you. No, that's strange. Maybe you got to sign off and sign back in. All right, we'll see you back. We'll see you when you sign back in. So in the meantime, while David does that, I am going to ask a question from someone on Facebook. Question for, I think, Sean, this is for you. When will our local police station, St. Paul Police Department, Western District, Hamlin Police Station reopen? Commander and staff are very involved in the community, and that's something we really need again. Thanks. Sean, can you hear me?
Councilmember, you're breaking up just a little bit, but I'm hearing that the question is, when will the Western Station reopen for meetings?
Yes, Hamlin. Yep, the Hamlin Police Station.
Okay, I'm having some technological difficulties, but unfortunately, that answer I could certainly find out if somebody wanted to contact me, but I don't have that information. The office will reopen.
Okay, we can follow up on that. And I am admitting David back. Can you hear us now? And can you be heard?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you too. Go on ahead.
Okay. Well, those are that. Going back to your questions, I recall you were asking about what's the ability of the city to enforce on private property, right? And it's a complicated question. I mean, first of all, everyone is required to follow the law. You can't break the law. You do have certain constitutional rights on private property, but the city of St. Paul has a very vigorous.
I'm going to have to
code.
log off and back on.
Oh, okay. All right. The city of St. Paul has a pretty good code of ordinances. It's like chapter 33, 34, chapter 40, which I think Travis talked about a little bit, on what both private owners as well as landlords are required to do to keep their property in compliance. Okay. So obviously some things are noticeable to law enforcement and to the public and to code enforcement. For instance, you can't leave garbage on your property, right? You have to keep your property in good maintenance. That means you have to, have your house painted and well cared for. You can't have broken windows. And those things are obvious, right? Now, it gets a little trickier when we're talking about inside issues in a home because those aren't always noticeable, A, to the public, B, code enforcement, and C, law enforcement, right? And a person has a personal right to privacy in their own home. But at the same time, they can't engage in illegal activity in their home, right? They can't have a meth house or can't be selling drugs from their home. And one thing we've had come up quite a bit, and I've dealt with in the past, is sometimes folks are overwhelmed. They have mental health issues or certain things in their homes become unsafe for themselves or others, right? And in those cases, usually we try to gain compliance through code enforcement, engaging social workers or family members. But sometimes, in rare incidences, we have to get what's called administrative search warrant or search warrant. In the case of like code enforcement issues, like a problem property that's become maybe a garbage house or something like that, we'd have to get to a called administrative search warrant to get into someone's home if the property owner or someone cannot consent to allow access. In the case of illegal activity like drug activity, if a home becomes a drug house or some other place of ill repute, as we like to call it sometimes, right? Then we can get what's called a search warrant, a criminal search warrant from a judge to execute a search warrant. And then the police would execute that search warrant with the force unit and would then arrest those folks that are engaged in that activity. Now, those are the extremes, right? I mean, normally a lot of problems through the good work of our citizens that are bringing us aware of these issues. Keep in mind, like Sean said, we can't be everywhere, right? And we have limited resources, especially now with everything going on. We need our community to be good partners with us and be our eyes and ears out there, right? And let us know when these issues come up. Contact the council member's office, contact the police, contact code enforcement, right? I mean, if it's a criminal issue, obviously contact the police right away. Okay, if it's a code enforcement issue, then you should contact DSI. If you're having, problems in your neighborhood and you're trying to resolve issues to your community, I mean, I think our community engagement unit at the police department is a good place to go. Or Council Member Naker, you've been very good at resolving some of these community disputes, and I've gotten involved in them as well. We've used such resources as the Dispute Resolution Center, right, to solve some of these issues. In our office, the part of the group that I'm part of called the Community Justice Unit, we now have our Ethos program and we're using circles and alternative ways to resolve a lot of these issues in a more amicable way versus going right to, issuing a citation or going to court. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at new and innovative ways to solve these problems, right? Because we all want good neighborhoods, we want safe neighborhoods. And, some of our old ways of doing prosecution and, we're trying new innovative ways to do things. So they didn't always work, right? Now there are some properties, the worst of the worst, where the only thing that folks understand is a criminal citation or going to jail, right?
Right.
But I think we all want a community where everyone has an opportunity to succeed, and we all want safe neighborhoods, and we're always looking for new and innovative ways to do that. And
I'm really
if
glad
community members have ideas, I'd like to hear those, right?
Yeah. Thank you, David. And I'm really glad that you mentioned other ways to solve neighborhood conflicts, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I hope what folks are hearing here, one, is it's complex, and there's a lot of different departments who are engaged in helping when there is a neighborhood conflict. Sometimes our tools are limited, though, and sometimes our tools are not the best tools. Sometimes we're not the best. The city, calling the city, might solve the problem in the short term, might not solve the problem, and might not make it even better ultimately in the long term. So I think other methods that you're talking about, resolution, calling me and having sort of a community meeting about it, or a neighborhood sit down, I've seen work really well. And actually at the end of this, I'm going to be previewing next week's City Views with some of our district council executive directors. And that's another option for community members who are having trouble in the neighborhood. But for now, I'm recognizing this always goes by way too fast, gentlemen. I'm so surprised it's already 12:04. I know you said you have a couple minutes left. I'm just going to do one final question I'd like each of you to respond to, which is just what piece of advice would you give to a neighbor who is having trouble with a property near them? What would be the piece of advice that you would leave them with? And maybe Sean, why don't we start with you? If Sean can hear me. And if not, we'll start with somebody else.
We might have lost them.
Can you hear us, Sean?
It's very digitized. I apologize. I'm not getting the question.
I'll type it into the host chat for you, Sean. Travis, do you want to start?
Yeah. We've mentioned the importance of reporting issues to the city, and we certainly can step in. And like David articulated quite well, our role is, at least in DSI, a lot of it is education, right? A lot of individuals don't recognize that there is an ordinance in place, what the rationale is for that ordinance, and what they need to do to bring their property into compliance. And we're not there, like I mentioned earlier, to make money, make anybody's life difficult. We're there to enforce that ordinance. And voluntary compliance is always our goal. So the one tool that we have in our toolbox is to provide additional time. And I would ask that if you have an issue that you report to the city, give us a little bit of time to make that change. Oftentimes people that are struggling to maintain their property have something else in their life that is prohibiting them from keeping up their property or maintaining a house like the rest of the neighborhood does. And once we get a complaint, we're cognizant of those concerns and try to work around whatever the issue is, and sometimes even providing resources as well. The other, so patience is one thing, but don't be afraid to call. We certainly, that's our role. We want to make things better and safer. The other thing is, depending on the situation, and every situation is different, it doesn't hurt for a neighbor to reach out to another neighbor and see if there's something that they can do to assist, or perhaps pull together a neighborhood group to take care of a maintenance issue or something like that. A lot of times that's not practical, or that's maybe not even safe. But if there's an opportunity, don't be afraid to reach out to your neighbor who might be struggling with some maintenance issues on their own, to try to address those in a voluntary, less government-y way. But if that doesn't work, you can always come back to the city and we'll do our job.
Thanks, Travis. I really appreciate that. Ultimately, that's what a neighborhood is about, is it's reaching out and trying to help neighbors. And a lot of us are going through really incredibly tough times, always, but especially now. And so I think that extra level of empathy is especially important. We're also all home so much more right now. So we're all kind of on top of each other in a way that we're not normally in the city. So I really appreciate that. David, do you want to go next?
Well, yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I can't emphasize that enough is, if there's a problem, maybe go to your neighbor first, right? Because you don't know what they're going through, right? I mean, everyone has their own views and beliefs of how a property should look, but how I think my property should look is different to what someone else thinks how their property should look, right? The great thing about St. Paul is we do have a rigorous code, but we don't have requirements of, your house has to be a certain color, or, your grass has to be kept a certain way, or certain flowers can't be planted. I mean, it has to be short, right? It can't be too long. But, everyone has their own views and beliefs. So I would encourage everyone who's listening to this to try to reach out to your neighbor first, because these are difficult times, right? I mean, in my own neighborhood, we have a lot of elderly folks, and there's a gentleman, I will tell you, who is very proud. He's 90 years old, and he likes to shovel his own sidewalk, right? But it's very in his driveway, but it's difficult for him. And he doesn't necessarily like to do it during the day, because then people always tell him, why are you doing that? Or they come over and want to help him. So my family and I have kind of taken on ourselves to kind of just go and shovel his sidewalk before he has a chance to do it in the evening. I mean, and those are things I'm talking about. Now, those are simple things, right? I mean, I think it's always good to approach your neighbor first about a problem. Now, if there's criminal activity and it's unsafe to do so, you shouldn't, right? Don't approach your neighbor if you feel unsafe or if there's been some issues of criminal activity. Then you should contact the police and don't put yourself at risk. Because we also see the flip side of that, where, a neighbor approaches another neighbor and it becomes an unsafe situation. So we don't want anyone to put themselves in a position where they jeopardize the health of themselves or their family. But at the same time, I can't say enough. It's amazing when we do get involved in these community situations, right? And we go to a dispute resolution center or have a sentencing circle or a community meeting, how these neighbors come together on simple issues sometimes, like even a noise dispute, right? We've used our Ethos program on two neighbors that were complaining about noise, and they became good friends. They they figured the elderly gentleman learned that this guy came home in the evening and turned on his stereo because he worked certain hours, right? And once he learned that, oh man, this guy, his downtime is when I need to sleep. But they entered respect for each other. We got the guy some fancy headphones, right? And now they're good friends. They watch football together. They play chess together. So, it's
noise canceling headphones.
Yes. For noise problems, I use them with my daughters all the time. They're great. Well, they use it on me, I should say.
Right.
So,
great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, David. Really, really appreciate that. And I think Sean can hear us, or at least knows the question now. Sean, do you want to go? Oh, well, we can't hear him.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Sean.
Yeah, can't hear him. And I'm sure he's got really good stuff to say.
I know, he's always got such good stuff to say.
Yeah.
Hopefully he will be able to get back to us. And I will try to extend my conclusion remarks here so that if he can speak up, we can hear him, and we won't go away until we can hear him. Can we hear you, Sean? Sean, are you there? No. Okay. We may have to wait for Sean, or maybe get his comments posted on Facebook afterwards. But for now, I just want to thank everyone so much. Thank you to my guests. First of all, Travis, David, Sean, this has been a really informative conversation, and I'm grateful to you for taking the time out of your days to do this. And thank you everyone for listening. I want to thank the folks who commented. I know some questions weren't quite related to our topic today, I will follow up if the comments were about something else. And so I'll get back to you. And Harrison, just want to let you know that you can word jump anytime. It is one city. These are open to everybody. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your kind words. Appreciate you taking the time to tune in and to leave such positive comments. If you are able to join me next week, I will be continuing at the same time, same channel. And next week, as I mentioned, I'm actually going to be talking to 2 district council executive directors, Monica Bravo with the Westside Community Organization and John Fury with the Capitol River Council, which is downtown district council. Both of those folks will be joining me next week to talk further about the district councils. So if you live on the west side, if you live downtown, or if you live anywhere else, if you live in Ward 4 and you just want to jump in, you are welcome to come. And again, we'll just do one more check for Sean. You hear us? No? Great. Thank you everyone for putting up with our tech difficulties today and for tuning in. We will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.